Good evening, everyone. It is time to call the Franklin City Council meeting to order. It is January 4th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Ms. Rhodes, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Austin?
Here.
Mr. Hukin?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Ms. McGinnis?
Here.
Ms. Nowie?
Here.
Mr. Prine?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brian Reese, would you lead us in prayer and pledge, please?
All right, I invite you to join me if you would like to. Father, we come to you this evening and we thank you for another year. As we enter into another year, I pray in this council that we would be guided by wisdom and discernment on all decisions that need to be made, on issues that are matters of fiscal responsibility or just shaping and guiding the future of our city. Thank you for those who you brought into the leadership of this city. Just pray you bless them and their families for their service. Be with our city as we go into this new year. Protect us, watch over us, keep us, and help us to spread more love this year. We ask all this in your name. Amen. As you join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May you seat.
Thank you, Brian. Hey, again, welcome everybody here tonight. Do we have any announcements, presentations, or public comment that doesn't pertain to anything on the agenda? Rosie first.
The State of the City address is scheduled for February 10th, or something that the Chamber hosts. The registration link is live on our website now.
And that is Rosie Chambers from the Chamber? Rosie Chambers from the Chamber, for those of you that don't know. So, thank you, Rosie. Krista, you had something?
Thank you. Krista Linke, Community Development Director, and I just wanted to remind the council that you have 2 appointments to the Redevelopment Commission, and that is a yearly, 1-year term, yearly appointment that's currently filled by Ann McGinnis and Ken Austin. And I can put that on the agenda for your next meeting if you'd like, or if you're willing and able to accept that again for this year, whatever you'd like to do. But I just wanted, I failed to get that on the agenda for tonight, and we need to do that.
When's your next
month.
meeting?
Coming
up this month before our next meeting?
It will be
January.
the day after your next meeting, so it can wait. But I just mentioned it this morning. And
I'll make a motion that the council reappoint Ken Austin and Ann McGinnis to the Redevelopment Commission.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job at letting them give time to think about it.
Method to my madness.
Nice approach.
Okay, and also tonight, which is not on the agenda, we always take this meeting to
You're the vice president, aren't you?
pick president and vice president for the year. So we'll start with president of the council, and I think everybody here knows Mr. Austin is the president. So we would take nominations at this time for president.
I'll vote for the nomination of Ken Austin as council president.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Mr. Austin. Is there any other nominations for council president? Hearing none, we will close that. So all those in favor of Mr. Austin being president again, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And our vice president, your vice president right now is Mr. Sean Taylor.
I'll move for reappointment of Sean Taylor as vice president of city council.
1 second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there, for Mr. Taylor, is there anyone else nominated for vice president? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations, and all those in favor of Mr. Taylor as vice president?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President.
Thank you.
I'll volunteer to serve as master of ceremonies for the council.
Second that, Bob.
Okay, so that gets us into the next item. Is there anyone else with any announcements, presentations, or public comment that's not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, that gets us to the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move to read old business by title only.
Second.
We have a motion to read old business by title only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, is item number one in old business. This is really strange. So we will take, it's also for public hearing, Common Council Ordinance number 21-28, Common Council Ordinance number 21-28, approving trash collections, curbside recycling and collections of fees. City Attorney Lynn Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to your instructions at the last two meetings, before you tonight for consideration is an ordinance that is intended to pass on to the residents of residential trash collection fees and recycling fees resulting from the increased contract cost that we had with Ray's. As you know, we've already signed a contract with Ray's. It was the first time it had been renegotiated in several years, and it got to the point where we were no longer willing to extend it without us increasing the cost substantially. So I bring to you the ordinance that does a couple of things. It passes on the entire cost of the increase, the entire cost of the contract to the residents and to residential users only. It's tied to those who are on our sewer bills and not people outside our sewer billing. It would be billed through the sewer department. The priority of the expenses would be for sewer, then stormwater, and then for trash and collection. It is here for your consideration only, and it can be revised, it can be adopted, we can do whatever it is that you wish, but we had to get something in place for you then to begin this discussion. Also pursuant to statute, public notice was given as to the fact that this would be considered tonight. The law required us to publish it once. I published it twice, just given the fact that it was the holidays. I wanted to make sure that it was out there, so you probably saw it twice. A big ad in the Daily Journal, and additionally they ran an article on it indicating yesterday that there would be a public hearing tonight. We have 30 minutes set aside for the public hearing. Generally speaking, if at the conclusion of that 30 minutes you feel more time is necessary, you have the discretion to be able to add more time. If not, you can then adjourn the public hearing at that point in time. Generally, our practice has been to share that 30 minutes between all persons that are either interested and or have any questions, concerns, or remonstrance against it. It's usually a 5-minute per person. But I will leave that again to your discretion as you consider it, but we'll begin with the 30-minute time frame. I also believe that Mr. Peters, our financial advisor, is here for the purposes of describing for you what it means, the amounts, how the amounts were arrived at, and so on. But again, it is your decision. Also, the public notice indicated that persons that had questions, concerns, or wanted to comment on it could also do it by writing, and I think you have received or has been passed on to you, if I noticed today, the writings that the city received, the mayor's office received from concerned citizens that are out there. So those have been provided to you and then we made part of the record. Having said that, Mr. Mayor, I think we're ready to open up the public hearing and address this question.
Okay, and again, we're really happy to hear from the public, and I know that we all live in this city, okay, so we're enduring with the same pain as you are. So, quite honestly, I'd really like to start a public hearing with this gentleman right here, and you've been here for 4 meetings, and you said you wanted to speak on this, so I want to ask you if you want to speak first and go up, and you've been very patient, and I really appreciate how polite you've been.
It would be helpful to our recorder if those persons who are wishing to speak would state their name for the record when we begin so that our minutes can be accurate. Jane, is there a sign-in sheet there?
No,
Not?
there
Okay.
isn't. I'm
Just then
sorry.
please state your name for the record and maybe what your address is so we have some idea, please.
My name, I won't take very long. My name's Bill Harmony, and I live in Franklin Lakes. My biggest concern was Franklin Lakes homeowners ordinance ordinance has or the rules say that no trash cans can be set on the side of the garage. And considering the size of these things, I talked to Bob Schmenhauser about it a couple of weeks ago. They're gonna have to amend their rules, is the only way I see it, because there's just not room in these garages for cars, and I've got 2 cars in the garage and two outside right now. And there's not just room for those big trash cans in there with everything else. I got an air compressor and a carpet cleaner and a 2-wheeler and a wheelbarrow and everything else. Unless they let me build a second mini barn to alleviate some of this thing. That was my biggest concern about Ray's, and as I told, I think it was Jane Rose before the meeting, I worked with Ray's I worked with Ray Matthews from 1955 to 1970 when he bought his first trash truck. And at that time, he just kept buying one, another, and at the same time, he was selling oil wells over in Illinois. And I believe he's still living, he's about 87 years old, and his son Donnie is running the company right now, as far as I know. But that's the only comments I had. I hope the city would work with the homeowners association, and there's others. I think Mr. Schwenhauser told me he lived in Paris Estates, and they had the same rules, and I think it's going to cause a little bit of problem. But if I could just put up like 2 sections of a privacy fence side of my house where it wouldn't show from the street, where you could put 2 of those trash cans, that would be a big help. And I understand the situation the city's in. Things cost money. I see a lot of other utility bills going up too. Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you, sir. And like I said, I appreciate you coming to the meetings and being very polite, waiting your time, so thank you for that. Any next?
Cindy King. I live on East Jefferson Street in the old part of town, not the newer addition. Upon seeing the article in the paper and talking to some of the neighbors, some of the questions and concerns I have, first and foremost is the cost to everybody. I'm a single person. I almost brought my trash with me tonight. It is half of a Kroger grocery bag. That's about the amount of trash I had being a single person. I also have concerns with the elderly. The fees with them being on fixed incomes, getting these 96-gallon containers to the street and back, that would apply to handicapped people as well. How are they going to maneuver these? I have the same concern as this gentleman right here. I don't have room in my garage, and there's a lot of neighbors in my neighborhood, no garages at all, anyway. And so that is a concern. Some of my unanswered questions are, what would be, how well was this advertised for bidding, since it's my understanding there was only 1 bid received? Did Ray's justify such an extravagant increase? How many employees might they be losing? They're going to these automated arms. You won't have 2 people riding on the back of the truck. Before, as Ms. Gray mentioned, it was a lengthy contract. My understanding, I think, from the article in the paper, it was roughly 10 years. As I read through the ordinance, I saw no dates. Is this a 1-year contract, a 2-year contract? If it's only a 1-year contract, what kind of fee are we possibly looking at then next year even? Excuse me. I would also like some clarification on the grass clippings, weeds, and the limbs, as in the ordinance I found that a little bit confusing. I am only a 3rd grade teacher, so maybe that was over my head a little bit, but I wasn't quite sure, is the street department still going to pick leaves up? Are they still going to pick limbs that we normally lay out? If not, is there going to be a fee for that? I also was wondering why there are only going to be 2 times a month for the recycling. I know some of my neighbors have 2 containers already and fill 2, some of them overflowing. I'm not an Amazon shopper per se, but I know a lot of people are. I was wondering, how quickly those are going to fill up. Those are my questions and concerns, and as I said, first and foremost is the flat fee for everybody, when I know some of you have families of 4 and 5, I know Sean, he has a lot of trash.
She's a third grade teacher as well, so.
Sometimes it's out on the street for us to go by and grab, but, again, for the elderly on fixed incomes, I know my parents alone, there's 4 houses in a row. The average age is probably 90. So with them on fixed incomes, you know, what kind of a hardship are we possibly placing? So did we think about how to come up with these fees, which I hear possibly this gentleman right here might address, but maybe there's some way, and maybe we're stuck for the rest of this year. But I think there are some things that we need to consider as we move forward. Thank you for your time.
Mayor, if I might, and I won't charge this to the public, but I think there's some legal questions that I can perhaps answer. The issues with regard to elderly and those costs, those are policy questions, but I can't answer some of your legal questions, but I don't want to use that time, so let me pause this. To answer your question, advertise for bidding, actually we over-advertise for bidding. We sent them out to all of the usual trash haulers, and only one would bid, and that was Ray's. So we had public meetings, we had public biddings, because quite frankly, Ms. King, we were trying to get somebody else to bid if we could, and we couldn't. You asked the question about, is it a 1-year contract? Actually, the contract we signed with Ray's is a 5-year contract. So this ordinance isn't technically a contract, this ordinance is simply imposing that fee. It starts in April and would continue until it's modified by this council in terms of what the cost would be. But if the number that is in the ordinance is done, it will take us through that 5-year contract. I would have loved to continue the 10-year contract on another monthly term. They simply would not do it.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
And quite frankly, started years ago trying not to, because we are one of the few entities or the few communities left in the state of Indiana who pays for trash service. And so we kicked it down the road, if you would, as long as we could. They simply would not do it. So the city was left with having to have some trash removal, and part of the trash removal also is for city buildings as well. So we entered into a 5-year contract, and the ordinance is simply passing that on, but it would be for the 5 years. If the additional contract were signed, again, into the future, then council could decide whether or not to change the fees at that point in time. The other question you had, I think was a legal question, was what about the grass clippings and the lemon leaf? That is a separate service that will continue to be provided by the city at no charge. So there are 3 different levels of service: trash, recycling, and the leaf and limb pickup that you always have will continue at no charge. So.
Other than trash, people tend to put out for trash.
Right.
They bag it up and set it out. So
Yeah, it's going to
But
be
it's not picked
much
up
the
by
same,
Ray,
much the
so.
same service that you're doing right now. No questions, just passing it on. But those are the legal questions that I think is probably, I didn't know if that would answer any legal questions for the group. Then we can get the additional things that if you want to. But I didn't want to use their time.
Take it.
And just so you know, Calvin Davison from Ray's Trash is here to answer some questions that Ms. Gray can't answer or I can't answer. And Mr. Jeff Peters is also here, one of our municipal finance advisor. And he is also going to answer questions that Ms. Gray or we do not answer when that time comes. So thank you for the questions that you had.
And I did want to add, anybody that deals with 3rd graders deals with a lot of time.
Okay, who wants to speak next?
So I'm David Sloop. I've lived over West King Street, also in the downtown historic area for almost 20 years now. Some of my concerns have been kind of building up with all the expansion of Franklin, and I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time on that aspect. This is just kind of a, here we go again, more additional costs because of Franklin growing is costing us, not consider myself an old timer, but 20 years here. I moved here from Minneapolis to be in a small town, lower cost of living, safer community, better schools, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, something I didn't even think about that this gentleman brought up is the size of these containers. I know me and my neighbors and a lot of people in town put our trash cans along our garages and along the alleys. And I got maybe a 60-gallon trash can right now that gets bumped occasionally by people driving down the alley and, you know, just don't have room for anything bigger than that. And then my kids also go out and pull the trash cans back or take them out to the curb, and those things are going to dwarf my youngest one especially. So that's something I hadn't even thought about, like, what am I gonna do with these huge trash cans? So anyway, that being said, I'm also one of these people that recycle much, much more than I throw away. So I have 2 recycle bins that are constantly overflowing, but my 60-gallon trash can, unless we're doing a big closet clean out, whatever, house cleaning, it's barely half full, maybe 1 trash bag in it. So the pickup is kind of opposite of what my particular family needs. I'd rather have recyclables picked up weekly and then trash picked up maybe twice a week or twice a month. So again, like I said, the biggest thing I hadn't even thought about is the size of these trash cans, is that I can't put them on my garage. I don't want them put them on my back porch where my grill and my patio, my furniture's at, I don't want a big trash can sitting there. So me along with a lot of other people downtown would have to figure out where to store these things at. So, but topics for another meeting is how far is Franklin going to grow? How big what's the goals? How big do we want Franklin to be? And how much do we want the cost of living to go up relative to Indianapolis, where I moved from, to get away from all that? So that's basically all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ron McMurray. I live at my present address ever since 1966. And this is the first time I've ever heard mention that we are going to have to pay for our trash pickup. Along with a lot of these other things these people are saying, I agree with. But the main thing that sticks out to me in this article from the Daily Journal, if I got my figures right, the taxpayer money is going to pay for close to $500,000 for trash pickup for city buildings. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
That's not correct?
No,
Who's paying for that $500,000?
you'll be able to tell you where that money comes from, financial. When he does his financial analysis.
But there's no taxpayer money going to be used to pick up our own trash, is that right?
It's not $500,000 to pick up the city of Franklin trash. The city of Franklin is going to be paying for its trash, but it's not $500,000.
At $40,000 a month, that's $480,000 a year.
It's $40,000 a year.
$40,000 a year.
So that's wrong in the Daily Journal already?
The Daily Journal's here, you can tell them it's.
That's for the city buildings.
It says $40,000 per month to collect trash at city buildings.
And it's $40,000 for the year.
That's wrong, man. Well, I'll shut up.
But again, thank you, because your concerns, it means a lot to all of us.
And if you had that question, others may have that same question, so thanks for bringing it up.
Anyone else? Yes.
Still a good looking hat though, Ron.
Still a good looking hat.
My name is Matthew Keaton. I live on Yandy Street in the old part of town as well. My big concern is, and I've actually talked to some of the trash collectors out there, that they are reducing it from one person on the truck, or 2 people on the truck, to 1 person on a truck. In my particular neighborhood, there's street parking, and I live on the side of the street where all the parking is. If they have the robotic arms that pick up these trash cans, where do we place our trash cans at? And I talked to the trash driver, the one that's going to be on that truck, and he said those arms are pretty destructive. Anything that's in its way, it'll destroy. Because it's such a cramped area, if one of those arms destroys something, is there liability with that, or are we just left to deal with it ourselves? And then a second what the teacher had to say, because I'm actually a registered nurse at a skilled nursing and rehabilitation center, and some of the elder populations that are from other areas that have the giant trash cans, they fell and broke their hips, fell and broke their knees, fell and broke multiple ortho issues because of having to carry their giant trash cans out. So those were my concerns. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, and I'm sure that Calvin can answer some of your questions there in a little bit. Yes, sir.
Street parking all over town.
I'm Gene Critchfield, I live on West Jefferson. First thing I want to say is thank all of you for doing all you do to make Franklin such a really cool place to live. I admire you for it, I thank you for that. Now you're dealing with this trash thing and you have new costs, and that's a challenge. My concern about it is that while most of us can handle that bill, we have 10% of our population living in poverty. It's not just the old folks, it's a lot of old folks and a lot of people living in real poverty where moms are saying, I don't have anything to feed my kids tonight. Now, my wife and I have a monthly income of almost the city's average of $6,053 per month. We're not quite there, but 1722, I'd rather not pay it, but I sure will. You know, it's just what we do. But if you're under the poverty line, you are making less than 1/4 of what I'm making. And I am really deeply concerned about these folks who, they're in pain. And I don't think it's just for us to say 1722 for everyone. And somehow we need to be willing to find another way to cover it. Most of us will pay the 1722, but if we are in that lower 10%, I think they need help. And I would be willing to pay an extra 10% in order to make this, in order to take care of this. And I think most of our citizens would too if they knew the facts. So I'd like you to consider somehow to take care of those people who literally can't make ends meet now and need our help. Let's just figure out a way to be kind, shall we? Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Linda Breeding, and I live in Franklin Lakes since 2006. I've never attended a meeting before, so this is a little bit important, the trash thing. I've heard most of my people already speak about my concern. My main concern is the same thing. Where am I going to put them? Got 2 cars in the garage. I'm a widow, but my sister also lives with me, and she's older than I am, so getting them maneuvering these trash cans is a concern. Even if they let you build a place and put a place, you still gotta get them around there. And I just don't like that idea. I don't like paying either, but I have no choice, I will. But the main thing is just where to put them and how to handle them. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And please come more.
Is there anyone else?
My name is Louise Brinkman, and I live on Paris Drive in Williams Point in a double there. Most of my real concerns have been answered, but I have a couple of others that I would like. Is there any way that everyone has to, that we have to assume the whole cost of the contract in the first year? I mean, you know, everything is going up. We're all even though we don't like it, we're kind of prepared for that. But this was a big hit for a lot of people. And is there some way we could do half of it and then, you know, I mean, it just seemed like a lot for every household all at one time to me. I just thought it might be a consideration. The other thing, if we have that kind of pickup, do we have to have it in the can if we want to throw it away? I mean, a lot of weeks, I just drag a bag out there because I don't have very much trash. And I can't put a garbage bag at the street anymore, as I understand. It's got to be in, so I either got to get my neighbor to take it, or it has to be put away in that can, if I understand. The arm has to get it. The arm won't pick up a bag. I've never had that, kind of, but I understand that that's, am I correct? Somebody here knows?
Yes, and ma'am, I'll have Calvin answer that question here in a little bit. We're trying to get everybody's question at one time.
Okay, all right.
I made a note of it, ma'am.
All right, and my other question was, she said something about picking up the trash 2 times a month. That isn't what I mean, the recycles. I thought I read in the article in the paper, it said 2 times a week, did it?
No. I don't want-
Bi-weekly means like every other week.
Yeah, 2 times a month.
2 times a month?
Yes,
Gotcha,
yes.
gotcha, okay. All right, I think they've addressed most of, I was glad to hear that it doesn't cost $40,000 a month to pick up your trash. I was gonna suggest you take a bag home. But you don't have to.
If it costs that much, I would suggest you and I go into the tractor business.
And I will tell you, there's a lot of dedicated city employees that would probably take some trash home.
I know, I know.
Is there anyone else? So, there's still,
Still 10 minutes if anybody has-
Is there anyone else? And we could use the 10 minutes later if there's more questions if you want. But what I'd like to do right now is, if there's no more questions, Calvin, did you get a list of questions?
I tried to.
And I've got it, I tried to make a list.
Remind me, son. Now that you sold me out, I'm gonna take the jacket off. I was sitting in the back.
You got a raise on your shirt, you better take it off too.
Calvin, if it's okay with you, let me highlight the questions that I think are your questions and then other questions that maybe would go to. A question about, I believe it was Mrs., I was just going to give it, Mrs. King asked the question about how many employees are you going to lose because of the automation, which I understood you don't have enough employees, that's why you need to go automation, but that was one of the questions. The question about getting the trash cans in a limited area was important, I believe. Do you have experience with elderly folks maybe being able to get back and forth, get things to the actual bit to the side of the road, and also small streets? How does it pick up? What happens with the arm? Do you have insurance? Those are general questions. So if you might.
Thank you. I may ask you for a reminder in a minute, but thank you. My name is Calvin Davidson. I'm with Ray's Trash Service. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'll kind of turn. I have total respect for Mayor and Council. Since the questions are coming so far from this side of the aisle, been with Ray's for 30 years. Ray is still alive. He's 87. And how old was your last name again?
Bill Harmony.
Bill Harmony.
I worked with him in 1955,
Okay.
and then he worked there till about 1970 when he bought his first trash truck. And we were on the safety committee together. He was over the night shift, and I was over the east factory.
If you don't mind, I'll tell him you said hello.
Do that. Hope he remembers me.
I hope he remembers me once in a while. But it's all good. it's a family business. We're like
The
you.
guy was a genius.
Well, he's still fun to be around. He's dangerous to ride with in the truck, but he's
You
lovely.
don't want him on that truck with the arms on Yandy Street.
No, we don't let him anywhere near the trucks today, but he's still, he's retired, as you can imagine, but he's still a very instrumental part of our mission and the drive that we have to run and maintain a family business. And his son Donnie is the president, his grandson Nevada is vice president. Lots of good questions. You're not alone. So automating trash pickup in the United States is something that has become the way to go. And it's the way to go for a lot of reasons. And we recognize one size fits most. It's challenging when you come up with programs like this because one size never fits all. It never feels good to everyone. But it does combat a variety of problems. The volume of trash today is much bigger than it is, thanks to, I always hate selling them out, but somebody else already mentioned the Amazon word, right? So it's changed our lifestyle largely because we get this big bulk of trash. Trash it's a ton of feathers today. It used to be a ton of bricks. And so we got to use larger containers to contain the trash. It's more efficient for us. We understand it causes pain on the other side, but there are efficiencies or safeties in it because nobody gets in and out of the truck. To the point about the drivers, I don't know who you spoke to on the route, but our guys are kind of like managing those third graders some days. They have fears about their job, and I respect that, but at the same time, I can't find enough help today. And the folks, you guys know it better than I do. Sometimes the phone gets noisy. It gets noisy when I've got new personnel on the truck. When I get dedicated personnel that show up every day, it's a quiet contract. We don't hear much out of it, and I appreciate that. We don't mind the questions, don't mind the phone calls and emails. If somebody's got something that's an issue, we want to hear about it. Can't address it if I don't know about it. The larger cans allow us to increase the recycle rate, which is something that's popular, again, across the country. Everybody wants to recycle more. There are people that are now working from home so the comment about wish they'd take their trash home, we kind of have, because people are now working from home. They're getting meals delivered to the door. They're spending more time in their house. So that's one of the issues related to the cost. So not to jump around too much, but so kind of talking about the big cans and why they're big cans. And we've seen communities address this a variety of different ways about, so what do I do with my carts if the HOA doesn't allow it? It's going to have to be a community partnership thing where everybody works together. If you're committed to recycling, if you're committed to increasing the recycling, then I'll leave that to you to work out, but that's not an uncommon challenge, is working with the HOAs in a blunt way. You may have to decide if the HOAs run the city or the city runs the city. That's polite enough to say it that way. The street parking and narrow streets are always a challenge. There are some in every community. We look at those largely on a case-by-case basis. We may ask people to set it out in front instead of in the alley. It may go to a curbside pickup instead of an alley pickup. If there are cars, if we damage a car, absolutely, we have insurance. We do get kind of picky because we get accused of a lot of things, so we want to make sure it was really us. But trust me, I've seen what an arm can do to a mailbox and a light pole. And so there'll be educational material that'll follow, probably be in some mailers or maybe your utility bill. It'll tell you, give you some good guidance about it. It's got to be 3 or 4 feet away from everything else, including other carts. If you set 2 carts right next to each other, the arm can't grab one. You gotta leave us a little bit of space even between the carts. So a lot of times folks will set the recycle cart on one side of the driveway and the trash cart on the other side of the driveway. Again, keeping distance from bicycles, children, whatever you don't want us to hit and wipe out. I'm losing. I was looking for a laugh. What else am I missing?
Well, there are some people sitting here talking.
Yes.
The question about automated versus
Personnel.
Yeah.
So it's true, there's only 1 person in the automated truck compared to 2, sometimes 3 on the labor-intensive truck. But it also allows us to hire someone. Be careful I don't say something inappropriate here, but it's a young man's game to ride on the back of a trash truck. Those guys sling 18 to 20 tons of trash every day per crew, per truck. it's a young man's game. And I'd be glad if any of you want to try it, but it's hard on you if you don't fit that physical ability. In an automated truck, if you can run a joystick, I can hire someone, again, I'd be careful how I say it, but it doesn't fit the young man's game, if I can say that. Sorry, you've got some ladies smiling at me, but it's the truth. You can't hire just anybody on the back of the truck. And it allows me to hire an older person, somebody maybe with a disability. If you can run a joystick, you can operate and pick up trash. And so we're pleased that we actually are able to do that in some of our other communities. So we hire somebody that might not have been able to physically meet the demands and requirements of the job.
We actually asked for bids both for person and automated. And
Yes.
If we went to person.
It was more money.
The cost was closer to 18 something, 19 bucks a month, right?
That's correct. Yeah, to do it the way we're doing it now was actually more money than going with the automated. And the every other week recycling was again, in our world, I don't know if that was a bid option, but that's a cost savings for us to drive. That allows us to use the truck on more streets. So half the town will be on the A week and half the town will be on the B week. So we'll always be in town if somebody had something missed or not out or something. It's possible. Don't do that to us a lot, but we'll be here in the community, but there'll be an A week and a B week. Keeps the cost down if I can use half as many trucks and drivers. Any questions from the council?
Sir, will there be any cameras mounted on any of your new trucks?
Some of them do have cameras. I'm trying to think where they usually point at the truck and at the hopper so that the driver operating the joystick doesn't work like this over his shoulder. He can watch the camera, if you will. Is that?
Okay, so I was thinking a camera that would show liability issues if that arm does damage a vehicle on Yandy Street. If there's a camera that would protect your people specifically as far as liability is concerned.
I don't think so. I mean, in today, you put cameras anywhere you afford to.
That's the reason I'm asking. This would be a new truck as well.
Yes, I'm not, I don't think these trucks respect that way. It's not a common request, but I understand, I appreciate the question.
Just thinking out loud.
No, that's fair. We, usually if a garbage truck hits your car, you'll know. It's not a scratch, unfortunately, but
I understand.
yeah, that's a fair question. They do have a lot of camera options on trucks today. I'm not 100% familiar with it, but I know they come equipped with some cameras.
Thank you.
Would it be an option for a smaller can if someone were to request it, like a 62 gallon versus a 96 gallon? Would that even be an option? Could the arms pick them up?
The arm can pick it up. It requires some adjustment, so it's kind of a commitment. And I didn't bring one tonight. I had a large can, a 96 gallon with me at the bid opening, I think, and we looked it over a little bit. But anyway, they're only inches difference. When it comes to storage and maneuverability, they are on two larger wheels. So if you go buy a trash can at one of the local hardware stores today, they tend to have much smaller wheels. These are on large wheels that roll freely. They're a lot, if you could push a shopping cart around in a grocery store, you'll be comfortable pushing one of these up and down the driveway. Now that's like anything. Careful how you load it, careful what you put in it.
So they have four wheels?
They have two wheels, so it's a tilt back.
So it wouldn't be like a grocery cart then?
Well, I'm saying with the ease of, they're not difficult to maintain or to manage if you just tilt it back and roll it. If you put 350 pounds in it, it's a handful, but most people don't have 350 pounds of trash weekly, and so that's what I mean by, depends on what you put in. We had one the other day, someone loaded full of dirt. You're gonna see, get an orange tag placed on it or a hanger on it that says, don't do this. So that's part of the communication back to the community to put the right things, the acceptable items in the container.
Calvin, Bob Hukin. I had the privilege of sitting in, I think, on one of the early meetings. I was glad I got asked into that, and I think that was maybe one of the really early ones when you were talking about the cost that you guys have been locked into for so long. I say guys, I mean, your firm. But I got just a couple questions. I know one of your concerns had to do with apartment buildings. Did you ever get that, did that get resolved through the contract? In other words, there's one fee per apartment unit, building and not unit. Did that get resolved? I'm just curious.
I believe so. I think that's something that we're gonna have to address in the education. Were you shaking your head?
Yeah, because I don't think, where's Mark? Yeah, we addressed it because we're not passing that on to the residents. We defined it differently.
You'll pick up from duplexes only.
Yeah.
3 units and above will have to have commercial service.
And they're on their own private, so it's not part of the cost passed on to residents. Large places like that, they gotta go get their own services.
So that got resolved?
Yes, it did.
I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. I've got a mother-in-law that right now, if she were by herself, she couldn't handle one of those trash containers. Fortunately, I lived not too far away, so I know I'd get the call to get out early in the morning at 4:30 to get out of bed, and cold days and everything else, to get that. But my question is, are you familiar with any communities or you ever worked with any community that may have like a grant of hardship exception on that type of thing?
I've never heard of anyone granting a hardship, but I have dealt with communities that encouraged the neighbor, or the neighbor kid, or the scout groups that I don't want to say orchestrated, but fostered that kind of environment. Look for somebody to adopt so that kids helped the people that needed it. Back to the bag outside the cart, whoever it was that asked that question, it's a common question. Unfortunately, the way the truck works with the arm, and they take it up over the top of the truck, unless the guy who plays for the Pacers in his part-time, he's not going to be able to get that up there. That's where it gets challenging outside the cart, or to just only set out one bag.
Well, I'm not copping out on my question, good answer in that, we are a community and we try to help one another. Right. Like I said, I'm just joking about helping if it ever comes necessary, my in-laws, I would go over and do it if I had to. And I'm sure others have neighbors. It's just more of an education type of maybe thing there, but that's still a concern because there are probably, there are not just a handful, probably a lot of folks, Cindy, like your neighbor, that may have a struggle, and you said that, I think. But I know the people across the street from you are concerned about it as well. The Peases, they've got that concern as well, so I think it's noted. So those are my questions to you. So thank you for answering.
I have a quick question. You mentioned it was full of dirt, which would have meant that was pretty heavy, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so take that versus mine that doesn't even weigh a pound. Does that, on those automated arms, does that make any difference? Is it gonna just like flip mine and then there goes my trash container because it wasn't heavy enough to...
No, it means that the cart full of dirt was left.
Right, but I'm just comparing weight.
Right.
Somebody that fills their trash can with, But again, my trash most of the time is less than a pound. And I know people are gonna be like, you're nuts. Well, I'm a single person, I don't really cook and I don't eat out. So it could be a bowl of cereal a lot of times, but, I don't have, it's not gonna be, technically it's gonna be a waste of time for me to haul that thing out to the street with a Kroger grocery bag in it, so.
Yeah, it won't be because we're gonna pick it up that way. That's why I started off with the explanation, it's a ton of feathers today. It's not about the weight, and a lot of the cost today is in the equipment and the labor and the insurance and the driving up and down every street. The trash doesn't weigh what it used to, but it still costs a lot to pick it up.
Calvin, if I may, you and I had a conversation about true recycling and how Raised Trash is one of the pioneers in the true recycling, and we had a resident that questioned me about that, and I sent him on to you, and he ended up coming and doing a tour of your facility. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, thanks for the reminder, and I don't see him here tonight. I don't think he's here tonight. Anyway, we had a resident inquired about, I read in the newspaper, all that stuff just gets burnt anyway. Or some people will say it goes to the landfill, and you don't really do that. Raised Trash Service doesn't own a landfill. So I'm financially motivated to do the right thing with what you did the right thing. So we get the material. We built our own sorting processing facility back in 14 and 15. And it operates at about 25, 26 tons per hour. Again, that's tons of feathers. So it's moving. Lots of bottles and cans, and there's not newspaper in the mix anymore. The newspaper was the heavy component. It accounted for a lot of the weight. So I invited this resident up, and you're all invited. I tried to make them small groups and come and see us. I love showing off what we do. It's really one of those see it to believe it kind of facilities. It's kind of like a theme park, a bunch of conveyors. It's just roller coasters and all the material. If any of you have ever worked in or been around an old grain mill, they took all the grain to the top and they dropped it down. Every time it falls, they cut a portion of it out. That's kind of the way our process works. We cut out the aluminum, cut out the steel, cut out the fiber, and then the plastics get sorted with these really cool near-infrared optical sorters that can differentiate between the type of plastic. And then pneumatically, little currents of air blow the material out as selected. Again, it costs a lot of money to do that, and we wouldn't make that kind of investment if we weren't serious about it, but I appreciate you reminding me of that. Yes.
I know everybody has to pay, which is fine, but what about if people don't want, everybody doesn't want a trash can? Like where I live is 30 doubles, I'm in a single house, and up at the Legends there are units of 4. Say that people just say, well, we want one can, one for the double, can they do that? I know they have to pay, but they maybe don't want two, each one have a can, they don't want to trash. Is that possible?
I think that's a city question.
Yeah, and I can answer that, Daryl, if you all want me to answer that. Yeah, the answer is, the billing is just gonna go out on the sewer department, on the sewer billing, so you're gonna get billed for it.
Yeah.
There are weeks where I'm in your boat, I don't put any trash out, so I don't have to put it out there to use it, don't have to have the extra can if I don't want it, but you are still gonna pay, so there's nothing.
I know that, but you have to have the can.
Yeah, but if you want to know, you don't have to have the can.
Because if there's a hard place to store, there's a hard to store them in some places,
Yeah.
two people that are connected might say, well, let's just get the one can for both of us. I know you're gonna get charged,
Sure.
but you can do
And,
that.
I mean, there's nothing that
Who wants
requires
an
you
empty
to.
can sitting around in the
That's
yard?
correct, nothing that requires you to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, but there will be a billing for
Right,
it, it's
I
not
understand
billed
that.
per can, but
Yeah.
to answer your question, you don't have to have the can.
You'll probably get one in the first rollout just because, unless we know about it in advance that you don't want it, you probably get one.
But I've swapped them out before, I had residents swap them out and just simply say, come pick it up. And they come pick it up, they take it.
Okay, Matthew has a question, and as long as we can keep everything under control, I'm okay with one off raising your hands. I appreciate that, Matthew. And the reason I say that, we've had meetings where it got out of control and you had to stop it. So if everybody can ask questions, which we like, go ahead, Matthew.
No, right now, if my trash can gets damaged, I go to Lowe's and get another one. There's a lot of storms and stuff around here, especially recently. You own the trash cans, correct?
The ones
Does
that
Race own
Yes.
the large trash? So if those get damaged, do we have to pay a fee to replace them? Would you guys replace them?
If it's damage caused by the truck, we replace them.
If it's damage caused by a storm or damage caused by anything else?
Then it's the resident or the city's responsibility.
How much do you typically charge for like a replacement trash can if that was to happen, do you know?
The carts cost us a little over $100. I mean, you probably have
figured
seen
it was
these.
gonna be really expensive.
These are not the carts that you buy at their heavier industrial container. They take a beating. They do have serial numbers on them. We know where we delivered them, and so
Because if it's a windy day, trash cans blow completely down my street.
these won't blow.
These don't
I mean, I'm not gonna say that the winds that went through Kentucky a couple weeks ago, there's no telling where you're.
I'm talking the ones that took Jeff Street Pub's roof off. Like we've had a couple of storms like that in the last couple of years that have been pretty bad.
Shouldn't have that kind of problem with the carts. We don't experience that in other communities. We currently service the city of Westfield with carts. Zionsville has carts. Speedway has carts. Plainfield's in the very position you're in right now of making a decision to containerize the town. So it's where the industry's going. There's a lot of experience based on, we didn't come up with this model. It's not right out of the rocket or anything. It's a proven model that we're proposing.
Daryl, you asked a question too that reminded me of another question. I had residents contact me and say, can we get more? And nothing in this ordinance prohibits you from dealing directly with Rays if other people wanted more, because other people said they wanted to have additional services.
And you can contact us for that if you want.
Yeah, but that's a separate
outside.
agreement, City. This one, I'm only one recycled, one
Right,
trash.
but I believe in the ordinance it stated you could not have more than 2 per household.
I don't remember if it said that, or what we were asking for.
Mark?
Yeah.
And that's correct. The maximum limit is 2 of the 96-gallon toters for trash.
For trash.
Per week, yeah,
Right,
for trash.
but we're only giving 1 per trash, so
We're
you
giving
can
one
have
per
another.
trash.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But I thought somebody was asking, like, if they wanted 4 of them, they wouldn't be allowed.
That's a good point. No, it's not, but you can contract to have additional trash, because most people ask the reverse. I have more trash than what Will wants.
I got one question here. I know some residents have purchased some of these 96 gallons from other businesses that don't announce town business and everything. Are they able to use those, or we have to use the ones that you provide?
If you have a cart that you want us to pick up, and I don't mean a 30-gallon trash can, but if you have a cart from another previous provider or something like that, that's the right kind of cart, industrial cart, we'll pick it up. We just don't want to be on the hook for the warranty. We break it, we'll put one of ours there, because we were supposed to put one of ours there anyway. So we'll provide a cart if it goes, and then you're on our program, it's kind of easier. And if our guys see our carts, they know to pick them up, helps us with the logistics. So you can start off with your own.
I don't want to encourage you to pick it up today, but I know one of my neighbors have the same type of carts there, and so that's one of the questions I've gotten there too. And it's more of a information for everybody. I think I know, when you're talking about changing recycling from once a week to twice a week, or twice a month,
right?
That is because we're going from the 20-gallon tubs to the 96-gallon container there.
Correct. And it's every other week, not twice a month.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, every other week.
Yeah, it's every other
Which
week.
would be 26 times
Yeah.
instead of potentially 24. Could be 26 times. I could add one other thing, is one of the reasons I believe in the initial meeting, which was just we were getting a lot of residents complaints that with the tubs, stuff was blowing around. And so the idea was to get something that had a lid on it so that things wouldn't be blowing around. Because I know, Mr. Dugan, we talked about that, getting a lot of citizens' complaints that we set out the recycling and it blows everywhere, it gets everybody charged. So we moved away from that in the bid request.
Hey, Ron.
Okay, being my first argument bombed out. There's been no mention of heavy trash week, that's another thing, and is there any way in the world you guys can talk this over and come up with a way of reducing the cost per household? You know?
Can I address that, Calvin? And then we talked about that.
Yes, go ahead.
And heavy trash is driving the price. And if we cut heavy trash out completely, and we've seen this happen, then you have people that is just throwing stuff everywhere. So we thought it was wise to stay with the once a month heavy trash just as it is. Is that accurate?
Well, we did reduce it from 2 items to 1 item, which helped the cause. So it's still going to be the first full week of each month. I'm sure I'm stating that right. First full week of each month, but currently it's 2 heavy items. The coming 5 years will be 1 heavy item.
So no more of these mounds of trash that you see when the renter comes out of a rental place.
I hope
You'll
not.
see the mounds.
Yeah, I can't promise you that'll go away, but I'm just as concerned about that, it sounds like, as you are. Because when we pull up on a mound, it's no fun. And I mean no fun, not because we take it, we take 2 items and we leave it, which generates phone calls and angry residents and disputes, so, yeah.
And what happens with that is our code enforcement has to go out. You have to give, by law, 2 weeks, and everybody, well, this has been out here for 2 weeks, why can't you get rid of it? By law, you have to give them 2 weeks to, and then if they don't move it, then we go move it, and then we charge the homeowners for moving their trash.
They gonna move it, or is the street department gonna have to do it?
We have been doing it in the past, and it may be something that we work with Ray's to go get the trash, and they charge
$40,000 a month.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But that is, no, that's an issue, and it's been an issue, and it's probably always going to be an issue, is You have landlords, and when somebody moves out, they think they can just put all the trash out the curb and it goes away. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, there's a mound on Yankee Street right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're the address that we. So I heard the question, and I've been asked this. Can you address why you were the only bidder?
Sure, I think I can speculate a little bit. There were a couple other bidders here the day of the bid opening that were curious, and I know them. It's a small industry, we tend to know each other. There's only 5 or 6 real, I guess, genuine waste haulers of this kind of size in the market. We were the only bidder in Plainfield as well. In Greencastle, I think they had 2 bids. I think we're all struggling for labor, just as you read in the paper, and if the ability to take on more is just, it's tough. And I think some of the competition just looked at it today and looked at the challenges they have, because we have passed, when I mentioned there were 2 bidders in Greencastle, we actually no bid we don't currently have a Greencastle contract, so similar to this, only reverse. We didn't bid on the Greencastle contract, but right now I don't know that I could hire and find the help to go do it. It's a tough labor market, and it's a high labor intensive way to pick up. I mean, it is trash collection in the residential sector is heavier than commercial, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's higher labor cost, more intense to pick up. What do we have? 8,000, a little over 8,000 homes every week. That's a lot of work.
I just had 2 quick questions. The one question is I think I know the answer. I got a daughter and a granddaughter lives with me, and they don't drink the tap water, and man, the plastic bottles are unbelievable. And we have 3 containers out about every week. But I think if I get them to smash those, that doesn't hurt, does it, with the recyclable, and that we can get more in it.
That's correct.
In the big day. And the other question I had was just a comment. I see a lot of people put leaves out. They bag up leaves and put them out. I chop those leaves up for the most part. And they're the best fertilizer you can get on your lawn. And I don't know why people pick them up and...
That's what I do with my leaves. The containers you have now, the orange laundry size, the laundry tub size today, is 18 gallons. Compared to 96 gallons and going to every other week, you should have plenty of room, whether you crush them or not, but crushing doesn't hurt us.
They probably help.
Should we hear from Jeff maybe?
Yeah, so it has, the questions I think has been answered, or the concerns was brought up. I think, Calvin, you've addressed those. And I know that people can send emails to, I was really happy and surprised on how you handled the emails that's been sent to you. I know Calvin has answered a lot of those. So if there's no more questions for Calvin, I would suggest you either talk to him afterwards or send him emails and for help on how to, if you need assistance with somebody or something special, they will try to work with us. And I think we need to hear from Jeff on the financial part of what got us to this point.
And I'm not leaving, I'll hang around.
Thank you. Thank you, Calvin.
Yeah. Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Do you want me to, I picked up a couple, 3 questions out of the comments, if you want me to address those first and then
Yes, sir.
revisit kind of the big picture. One, what we were talking about, and Calvin addressed it, the one size fits most. When we set utility rates, we might have larger fees for larger users. But here, we're talking about one set of totes. So we don't really have a database of how many gallons of the trash that you used. We have one container, and that's basically what the fee's set on. So the fee that is proposed today at that $17.22 is simply the cost of the contract fee divided by the households. So it's 1-to-1, there's no variable in that. We also had a comment about the payment of the city's trash service. It is still within the general fund, as it has always been. So the discussion before you today is removing this cost from the general fund and putting it out into its own utility fund and then collecting fees in order to offset that cost. But the $40,000 of trash pickup for the city is still included within the general fund. There was another comment about, if we could help those 10% that are in poverty with a lower fee. For property taxes, we have a data set where everybody shares proportionately based on the assessed value of your home, which is publicly known. Your income tax situation is not publicly known, so there's no readily available database where we could look at low-income individuals and say, okay, you're going to pay a reduced trash fee. I don't know if that could be written into the ordinance where people could provide certain information. I would think that very difficult to administer mechanically from the billing side.
Policing would probably be the toughest part, wouldn't it?
I would think so. And, yeah.
Or whether they're going to be directed to appropriate services like the trustee's office or those kind of places that may assist with those kinds of expenses, I don't know.
Apologize, Jeff.
No, not at all. But like I say, mechanically, I struggle because I don't know the available database that you could make that determination and reduce that fee for each individual, or for those lower income individuals. Back to kind of the big picture, a couple things I did want to address. I think everyone was circulated an email today where a citizen looked at quantifying what they thought the rate should be rather than the 1722. And I would advise you to disregard most of the math that's in there. In principle, some of it is correct, but this individual is looking at the cost that is in the general fund to be paid for trash service from 2021 and then dividing it by each homestead. Well, that's not how that money is derived for the general fund. That disregards every commercial business that pays a lot more in taxes to the general fund. So although they arrived at an amount that they thought the fee should be at $8.06, it would be much less than that if you really did the math according to that philosophy.
Said another way that maybe a third grader can understand, and I think to me, is commercial businesses in our community pay a large portion of our taxes that we use in our general fund, but we aren't giving them any of these services.
Correct. So they are further subsidizing the trash service that is for residents only. And part of it is the cost and assessed value of their building is significantly more in value and they pay more. But also for each homesteader that lives here, they're capped at 1% of their assessed value and businesses are paying 3%. So not only are they paying more because they're bigger, but they're paying 3 times the effective rate into the general fund and not receiving any of the service. So
to take that
heavily subsidized.
500,000 out of and divide by 8,000.
Yeah, divide it by the homeowners.
It's not.
Yeah, that's never gonna be an apple and an apple, and it's,
Understood.
yeah, not even close fruit-wise. Other things to kind of talk about, big picture and how we got here. The trash service has been historically, as somebody mentioned, this is the first time they'd ever heard about paying for trash service individually. And that's because the city of Franklin has taken that on from the beginning of time until now. As you have this large increase in fees for trash, you also have other growth in your budget for salaries and wages, public safety, recreation, street projects, etc., that have all led you to a budget amount in '22 that is significantly larger than it was in previous years. And one of the things that I brought forward to the council and again wanted to address is that you as a fiscal body have made the choice over the last several years to make sure that your expenses are less than your revenues so that you continue to add cash to your operating balances. And this provides you with flexibility to respond to needs in the future. whether they be public safety, park, roads, a project that you need to undertake. And it gives you the flexibility and ability to respond to that in current time. If you are not going to recover some of these costs in '22, we would anticipate that you're going to be just about even revenue to expenditure in '22. So certainly you could do that. You have lots of cash in reserve. You can go forward into future years and you can continue to subsidize trash. But you will gradually either eat into your cash balance and reduce those reserves that you've built up over the years. Or you will make decisions where you may short another service. It might be police, it might be fire, it might be park, it might be street. But you're gonna have to make those decisions. So my overall thought of bringing this before you was the path that you've been on is to make sure that your revenues exceed expenditures. And this is the opportunity for you to look at and say, okay, we're not gonna be able to do that in '22 unless we do something different. What has been the biggest cost change in '22? It has been the trash service. And we have talked about in previous years about utility rates and utility structures in general, where we have a service that is consumed by a certain group of people within the community, and they pay proportionately for that service. And that's the utility setup of how you pay for those services with user fees, and trash fits exactly into that. You don't subsidize people's water bills or sewer bills, so the question comes about, why would you subsidize their trash service? With that, we did provide some stuff to you, looking proportionately on the rates for Franklin as proposed versus some of the surrounding community. And we looked at Greenwood City and Franklin are both at this $17.22 that's been proposed. If you contract for trash service and recycling outside the city of Greenwood, you're more at like $29. If you're outside in the Bargersville area where I am, it's approximately $35.75 a month. And one example that I had of city-provided trash service that is similar to yours is the city of Beech Grove, and their effective rate for 2022 is going to be $21 a month. So it kind of gives you an idea of where you are geographically, price-wise. And if you look at, you know, the majority of the people within Johnson County covered under this are paying for trash service today, but not the people in the city of Franklin. But again, you know, this is a fiscal body choice of how it is you want to allocate your resources. But I will say to you today, if you continue to subsidize trash service, you will have fewer options of your cash available in the future to allocate toward public safety, parks and rec, street, and other projects. I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. Hugh.
It's an easy question. You've done a lot of work for the city, for redevelopment commission and the council and so forth. I think a lot of these folks don't know who you are. So could you just let them know who you are and what you've done?
Normally I don't get to talk about myself.
Well, hopefully I'm correct in that, because I think this might be their first look at you.
I am the financial advisor for the city, the redevelopment commission, the utilities, not only in the city of Franklin, but for various communities throughout the state. We work with cities, towns, counties, redevelopment commissions, special taxing districts like fire districts, townships. And I've been in practice for 26 years. I came out of the Department of Local Government Finance, where we were actually regulators at the state, where we certified all the budgets, levies, and assessed values for every taxing district and fund in the state of Indiana. That was a fun project for 2,500 units of government to organize all that and get it certified and out the door. But for the last 26 years, I've helped communities like yours understand and articulate your issues, educate taxpayers, educate elected people about how we allocate these resources, how we develop operational plans to make sure that we can continue to provide services at the level that you want as a community for perpetuity. And that perpetuity argument, you know, the longer I practice, the more I've got to see what we've done over the years and accomplish. And that's really important because we always want to be in a position, if possible, that we don't have to worry about how we're going to get from year to year. And in lots of situations over the last 2 decades, I've been called into situations where there is no cash, and we figure out how we're going to cut services, what we are not going to provide in the coming year in order to balance our cash, get back to a liquid position where we can then provide adequate services to the communities. And I'll tell you, those are really tough situations, really tough public hearings when we go through and look at services that we're going to cut, people that we're going to fire, and how we're going to raise taxes. It is a lot better to be on the front end of it as you are, and to be able to look out into the future multiple years and say, okay, you know, we're going to tweak this here, we're going to tweak this there, but we're going to stay within our model of how we operate forever going forward.
And you're based out of where?
227 East Jefferson Street. Beautiful Franklin. Lifelong Johnson County resident.
We can raise his commercial rate. Oh, wait a minute, I'm in that vote too, never mind. That was a dumb mistake.
So Jeff, I think one of the biggest questions I've had since we've been considering this is people want to know, okay, so for, like you said, since the beginning of time, we've been paying for our residents' trash service. So we've got this pot of money that we pay the trash service out of. Can you go into more detail of what happens to that pot of money now that residents will be paying? Where does that pot of money go? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that pot of money today will stay in the general fund. And for example, in the last 2 years, you have added like $2.3 million to the general fund cash balance. That has allowed you to respond to different things regarding COVID, et cetera, that you had to make expenditures that you wouldn't otherwise have made. So it gives you that flexibility. This again, if you choose to pass on these charges, you will allow that money to be in the general fund and have $600 and some thousand in excess in 22 that you can use for another project, or you can hold it back for future services. And a lot of things, as we're talking about today, is inflation. What is our inflation really going to look like as we go out in the next 2 or 3 years? Are we going to need these excesses in revenue over expenditure just to meet our operating budgets in the coming future years?
For an example, I would just like to say this year, and we have private meetings with the city council. I've met with everyone one-on-one, and we talked about the trash.
Those were one-on-one meetings, we didn't have no private meetings.
I had one-on-one meetings with the council. And the biggest thing that we had this year was wages. We're at the point right now where, we were losing people, officers and firemen, and we were one of the lowest paid fire departments and police departments in Johnson County. And we gave a raise that was 6% to the firemen, 6% to the police, and look where inflation is, and we're behind 6% already, and it's $600,000 in raises over the whole city for the 190 employees. So that's where a lot of our money goes to, and I think I just think that we owe it to our people that do a good job for the city to be able to make a wage that they deserve to make, so we don't lose people in other cities, and this is a way to help with that. And that's a hard reality that I think we all had to come to. So, at least it was hard reality for me, and Jeff talked to me like I was a third grader, and got me to see that, so thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, appreciate your efforts. I got one question, and Lynn's probably for you.
Yes, sir.
Legally, what can we do about the HOAs and the space consistently with like Franklin Lakes, the ladies here from Franklin Lakes, and Mr. Harmony is here from Franklin Lakes. specifically, about, they're gonna be, the HOAs, they're gonna start sending out stuff to you guys, and what can the city do to work with the HOAs to help remedy the situation? Lynn, how's that
Two
gonna?
different answers.
Yeah.
Legally, we have no authority to require the HOAs to do anything. We haven't
Okay.
dealt with. HOAs are private contracts between their homeowners and the association themselves, usually established by developers. So we don't have any ability to change HOAs. It's just like when people come in and talk about they want to change and shed. So I think what has been done in the past has been to work with, I know other communities work with, because just going off track, but Jeff, anecdotally, with all the people you work, is there any place that pays all of those expenses? Trash expenses?
For trash?
Yeah.
Not that I can recall as of today.
Yeah, so this is not uncommon, I think, that was one of the things, this is not an uncommon problem that's happening.
And this has been a common trend over the last 26 years.
Correct, so a lot of people have reached out. I know at the county, what happens is the HOA, and many of the subdivisions have gotten their homeowners themselves to contract with the private, because the county doesn't do this. They just leave everybody alone.
Sure.
So if you're out in the county, you just have to enter into a contract. The HOAs have worked with the haulers and said, okay, if we use rates for everybody, what's the rate we'll get, so the trash cans will be out on one day only. But to be direct with you, if someone gave their HOA a declaration and said you're in violation of our covenants, we can't stop them from doing that. It's one of education, cooperation, and not threat of litigation.
I'm disappointed none of them are here tonight, none of the board members,
But I just say that this is a thing that's been going on a lot, but it requires education and cooperation.
Ms. King?
I was gonna say, I'm used to my kids raising their hands and they don't talk till they're called on. Let's say, for instance, that Franklin Lakes then, and I don't know if Paris Estates has an HOA, I know there's several places that do. But let's say they decide to go that route, one-day pickups so that, they're separating themselves. Does that raise the rates for the rest of us? Because we are eliminating so many more households at this point.
It doesn't raise the rates.
Well, you're not dividing it by 8,000 households.
Well, but we're mixing apples and oranges here in the sense of the HOA, they're not gonna go out and privately contract. That was perhaps, I didn't mean to mislead you. That's what people do in the county. Because the county, they don't have.
The county, like if I lived outside the city limits, I could choose to get trash people or not.
Correct. This ordinance, everybody who gets the sewer bill is gonna get charged that rate. So that's not gonna change.
Well, you jumped to a sixth grade
conversation.
Mr. Financial Advisor,
Sir.
I'd like you to help me understand. This is going to cost us $17.22 per month, no matter where we would go, right? Just gonna.
It is going to cost the city $17.22 per month per household.
Yeah, okay.
And the question is, do you continue to pay all or part of it out of the general fund of the taxes that have already been or will be collected for the city? Or does the user pay all or part of that $17.22?
I understand. Now, I also understand that you want more revenue than costs. That makes perfectly good sense. But the more revenue is there, if we turn that $17.22 into taxes, and we continue to pay this out of the general fund. Is that not true?
I don't believe I'm following you, but one thing is you don't have the ability as a city to raise your taxes either in property or income for providing trash service.
We can't do that.
No. There are only a few exceptions for raising property taxes, none of which they currently qualify, and they do not have the ability to raise income taxes.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
This gentleman back here had a question.
Yeah. I'm
Can you state your
landlord.
name, 'cause I don't think
I
he
got
was here.
you, huh?
I don't think he was here earlier.
No, I missed it. I said 7 o'clock in the paper, so I don't know how.
Can you state your name, please,
Tony,
for the record, so she can hear it?
Tony Farrell.
Tony Farrell, thank you, sir.
But I got a few rooms around town. I know all you people make decent money. I got a lot of vendors that don't make good money. And that's gonna be a burden. Especially, 17 after taxes every time, 17 something more a month. I mean, that's, gets to be quite a bit of money for them, so they're low income. So I don't see why you keep the 800 something thousand. That's just my point. I mean, you're not looking at the small people in this town.
Thank you for the comment.
At some point, we should probably close the public hearing and get some direction to.
Yeah, is there any more questions here for Jeff? I'm sure there is.
Not for Jeff.
I'm just talking about closing the public hearing and then opening it up for your
Yeah,
discussion.
mine's later.
Okay.
I think it's been a good public session. I appreciate it. So at this time, we're going to close the public hearing and leave it up to the council here to discuss. Unless you have a question.
I do. I've got a question for Mr. Jones sitting over there, who's with the street department. I know that when you mow, you don't pick up, you typically just blow it against your neighbor's house. However, occasionally I'll help my in-laws once again, and where I used to live, which was in his neighborhood, he doesn't do that. I'm just giving him a hard time. Brett, tell us exactly what the city's gonna require as far as grass clippings. I mean, can we bag them and just leave them on the street? Or do we have to just dump the bag out on the street? Or do we just not bag at all? I mean, it's a big concern,
I guess I'm not familiar enough with what Calvin's game plan on. My assumption would be that like you can now, you can bag them and set them out as trash.
Within the
container.
Within the bag limit or
Yeah,
within the container.
there are certain times of year, like in the spring, where, there's not a big lot on Kentucky Street where I mow, but I may get 8 to 10 bags of trash. And they're not small bags. And so that's just, and I will do whatever the city requires, but I'm gonna get asked what do we do during those times? And there's sometimes, like in the fall, we might go ahead and mow the grass and catch the leaves at the same time. So you've got a mixture of both. Do we dump that on the street or do we pick that up? That may have to be worked out, I don't know.
Right.
But, I don't think we're alone with that. I think there's a lot of folks in town that do that.
Yeah. And it's most generally misconstrued as to what the proper way to put leaves curbside is to begin with. But yeah, I mean, we currently do pick up a lot of mixed bags of, I shouldn't say bags, not bags is not correct, mixed volume of grass clippings and leaves, especially in the fall. We don't do much of it, in the warmer months, because most people don't, I don't think, bag their grass clippings like we once did. But obviously, we try to do our best, and a lot of times we find piles of grass clippings within piles of brush and other things, and so we try to do the kind thing to do is just take the whole pile. But currently, we are not really equipped to be in the grass clipping business. Like I said, if it's commingled with the leaves, it's not a big deal. But we really prefer not to run green material through a brush chipper because that is not what it is designed to do. So unfortunately, we find those. They're usually nice hidden surprises, but they're also expensive because they end up causing downtime and machine repairs and other things. So, but I can work with Calvin. I apologize, I haven't read it thoroughly enough to understand the.
Well, perhaps in the spirit of trying to make it work, we can wait and see how big those cans are. And if you can get 2 cans, maybe some of those, because my in-laws, for example, they don't put out a lot of trash.
Right.
And so they're gonna have some excess space. And so maybe 1 can might accommodate them most times, because maybe it's 2 or 3 bags.
Right.
But at certain times of the year, it could be 5 or 6, or 7 or 8.
Right.
Depending on the time of year. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Anyone else?
I have a question. So if it's during the holidays,
and, where you have family and trash, like more than normal, will there be extra fees for that, or how does that work? Or will that just be considered like a heavy trash day kind of thing, or?
Calvin, can you address that? We talked about that a little bit. The question that she had there. I mean, it's one trash can.
It's one trash can unless you've called or made arrangements to have a second one. And the second cart is not a, well, hey, I need it for a week or two, and that turns into more money than you would want to know about probably because it gets into too much to deliver. We do encourage people, this is to motivate a discussion, if I can say it this way, about recycling, about letting your leaves go on your yard. It really is designed in a way to get us to think more about what we're doing with our trash and how much trash we generate. The cardboard boxes that go in the recycle bin, break them down, cut them up so they'll fit, so you can get a lot. I'm a family of 6, I have 4 daughters. Amazon called last week and asked if they could have some of their shoes back. And after Christmas, we put 2 carts out, one for trash and one for recycling, and they were both pretty full, but it can be done if we work together and work as a community. A lot of it is about that education piece.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Mayor, what do we have in plan as far as the education piece concerning all of this?
Calvin, you want to address that again, Calvin?
I mentioned earlier about tag teaming with the utility department and putting something in the utility bill. We haven't found it to be as effective to send out a separate mailer. We all get so much mail. We found those to be less effective. So putting it in with the utility bill tends to get read. Communicating with your, do you have a communications, I forget if we've talked about that. So that you're hitting Twitter and Facebook and all those kinds of places. This was a good place for me to mention the HOAs. Again, it's not my place to legally. I appreciate Lynn's, that's what I've heard everywhere else. It's a tough relationship, but the best way to work it out is coordination, cooperation, communication. And the best one that I ever worked with was Westfield. They had a group called We Can, and it was an association of the associations. All of the HOAs, you can imagine what that room looked like when they got them together, right? But they did. They got together and they had quarterly meetings or something. I've been invited to speak at some of those, and we worked through a lot of the issues because what felt good for one, they're just like all of us. One size didn't fit all for them either. But they worked it out. They got together. A good way to cooperate.
And Mr. Austin, add to your question, add to that answer. Any citizen that sends me questions like that, I forward that on to Calvin to answer it because I feel like he's more qualified to answer that question than any of us are.
And I'm happy to copy any of you back on the answer or let you know the rest of the conversation.
And Calvin, on your website, don't you have a most asked question?
I think we do have some frequently asked questions. We're constantly updating that as we convert more communities to carts. There are cart questions as opposed to the old traditional questions. But yes, I took notes tonight to use to update those questions and answer.
Thank you.
And I do have one more other question. This is coming from my district, District 5. I do have some neighbors out there that were wanting me to ask. So the $17 on the monthly bill, that will be, like the city couldn't pay, continue to pay for their part, and then the rest of the community going ahead and pick up the overage, or no?
So I want to leave that to Jeff, okay, the advice there.
And I just want to make sure that the city is going to pay the city's part.
Well, maybe I worded that wrong then.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure,
They're,
there is no passing on of the city
Right.
trash responsibility.
I guess what they're wanting to know is if the city would go on ahead and continue
Subsidize.
to do, yes,
Subsidize
what they've
portion.
always been doing for years and years, and then what this new contract is bringing in, the money, the increase, if the family just couldn't pay the $7 or $8 a month instead of the $17 or $18 a month.
And Jeff, can I answer that first, my part? So when I said I met individually with each city councilman, when we went over the budget, we do that every year. He wasn't on the council at that time, or Josh, and we talked about the trash, and I had talked to Jeff before that, and I feel the same way as everybody else. I got my house, I got apartments, I got to pay as well. So my suggestion was start at 10 to the user, and the city start out at 722. However, every year that we add to that $1.45 a year for 5 years to get us to that 1722 level. And then at that time, we're gonna have a new contract, and then see where that takes us after that 5 years of the increase. And then we go from there. But that was, however, Jeff, and I don't know if you're gonna say this or not, he advised against that. He said that we should do what we looked at the 1722 for this year. However, I personally am okay with the 10 and 722 with the $1.45 a year raise. But I also want to listen to our financial advisor that I've listened to for you was 10 years now, I think, with the city. So I think you know our financial situation pretty well.
Yeah, and to your answer specifically, yes, you can develop any system that you want as to how much gets passed on to the user versus how much the city continues to pay. You can continue to pay it all if you want, and this is just a fiscal body policy discussion. You have the cash means in order to do that for a long period of time. So to me, it comes more back to what have you done historically as a fiscal body? And you have kept your expenses below your revenues. If you continue to subsidize trash fully, you're not going to be able to do that. So you're going to either be even, which is going to provide you fewer options and flexibility in the future, or depending on what inflation does going forward, you will start to eat into that cash balance. Then you're going to have to make choices in the future between potential other services of public safety, parks and rec, etc., versus subsidizing trash service. But you can adjust that year to year. You could, as the mayor proposed, put on a certain amount today and then continue to escalate that until you recover it all. And if that's policy choice, I think that's fine. Again, you have the cash to make those types of choices today, and that's one flexibility that you have provided yourself by doing what I'm advising you to do today, which is recover it all. Continue to add to your general fund every year so that you have flexibility. But if this is a time that you decide as a fiscal body that you need to use some of your cash in order to smoothly implement this on people, you have the cash to do that.
Phase it in.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we didn't do anything, it would be this year eating into that cash, $700,000.
Right.
Would eat into that, so you can see $700,000 a year eats into $2 million revenue pretty quick. So
Right. And one of the things I wanted to point out too, is the proposed ordinance before you is for discussion, but you'll note that I don't start those payments until April. We have been paying this contract starting January. So the city will pick up this contract from January, February, March, and probably through April before we start getting any revenue. So 4 months of this, the city is picking it up. Because we are under contract with rates, because we had to keep trash getting picked up. So we will be paying, and the contract amount, what is the contract amount? We divide that by 12. So 4 months off the top, we're picking up.
I'm in favor, and this is not an action taken, but I'm going to say this because I'm not going to be here for the vote, unfortunately. But
we can vote tonight, Bob.
Oh, we can?
But if you want to revise it, it'd probably be a good idea to bring it back in a revised form. That's if you're going to do something. I think make sure it's there. We've got time. I built time in for you to have this public meeting, have this discussion. We're okay in terms of time.
Well, I have one more question for Jeff. As we add homes, and we've got homes on out by Cumberland and so forth, they're going to be coming in. That will be. We don't adjust that. I mean, we're under contract. Is our contract fixed on the number of homes now for the next 5 years? Okay, so as we add, then okay, so it
just passed on to
moves with that. Okay.
Yeah, it moves with the number we add in. So any more growth, I think one gentleman was concerned about growth. They pay their same share coming in.
Okay.
And I'd like to address the growth just a little bit. The growth is not what's caused this. What caused this is the fact that we're doubling our bill. It's not the growth. So
Again, yeah. Well, we're working off rates at how, 10 years old?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're gonna fix them 5 years into the future, not knowing what inflation is.
Yeah.
That, I think, is a real key component.
Correct. And I think one of the conversations, and again, this is policy, so I don't want to overstep, but I just want to remind everybody, one of the conversations we had when we discussed this was, is it better for the taxpayer to just know up front, or will they feel like every year we're dinging them again by doing a sliding scale? So those were the two discussions that were had, and that's why it was drafted this way, but I can certainly adjust it however you wish to adjust it. But some people were said, I just want to know right up in front for the 5 years, as opposed to feeling like my bill goes up every year.
If we did as the mayor had recommended, would we have enough out of the budgeted money to cover the cost for this year?
I don't know about the budgeted money, but you have plenty of cash reserves to do that if that's the implementation.
Yeah, that's what I'm
But
trying
you
to,
will
would we
be-
have to go into the cash reserves if we only charged our citizens $10 a month, for example?
Because the first 4 months we're paying for it.
Right.
And that rate we're picking up. What's the total contract amount, Mark?
1.7.
1.7?
Around million.
So every month, the city right now is picking up $141,666. So for the first 4 months of the year, we're paying almost $570,000 of it right now.
But if we're implemented at $10 starting in April or May or wherever it is, you might just guess, but maybe we need to know the exact numbers. How will that affect us at the end of the year?
Yeah,
Or we'll be in the hole at the end of the year.
Right.
You will be in the
If we implement at $10.
Yeah, you're gonna eat some, but again, from my perspective, you have put yourself in a position that it's more of a philosophical discussion of, are we going to recover all of it? And if so, what time period? Again, because like I say, you have substantial cash reserves to implement in whatever schedule you choose.
Phasing it in, it does provide a little bit of relief for those that it's gonna, 17 as opposed to $10. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot for a lot of us, some of us, but it does for some others too. So there's some advantages there too as well.
Yeah, like I say, completely a policy choice from your side.
Thank you.
I think the first draft of the ordinance that was laid out for you was like that. Had it phased in. So I can certainly do it, but you may want to know how much money you're talking about. Because you will be in the hole this year.
So we'd be in the hole for probably 2 to 3 years, right? Until it gets caught up, so we're gonna be digging into the ability to serve with police, fire, roads, and, fire truck breaks down, we've gotta buy a fire truck, we don't have that reserve anymore.
So, correct, so long as, I've never, and I've certainly not been here as long as everybody, but I've been here for a long time, I've never known the council to ever spend more money than they bring in.
Yeah.
They don't.
Ultimately,
We don't do that.
we would ultimately be spending more for at least 3, probably 4 years than what we're actually bringing in.
And you
So
don't bring that.
services would have to go down and pull off the budget for the next 3 years in order to, pay for the trash if we did a sliding scale.
It's either that or dig into the cash reserves.
Yeah, and then ultimately.
But if you get in excuse me, Sean, if you get in a situation that a year from now, it's not working, we could say, okay, we're just gonna go up to the full amount then. We could do it at that point. In other words, you're not locked in for the next 5 years as a city, what we bring in on revenue. We could just say, instead of implementing it all, finally say, okay, a 5-year step, you could say after the first year, this isn't gonna work. We could, I think, I don't wanna get caught up in gloom and doom and everything, but, I'll just stop there, but.
I think I would struggle with, me personally, I think I would struggle with saying, okay, this is what we're doing, we know this is the cost for 5 years, and then we decide, let's go up a little bit more. I don't know that we want to do that.
Well, another thing you can do, and I'm not trying to reach for straws, is just raise your base a little bit. Instead of 10, make it 12,
Would it be helpful to everyone here if you knew the dollars?
Oh, certainly.
I mean, we have a contract, and we're paying it. There's not gonna be interruption in service.
We've got until April anyway to figure this
Yeah,
out.
we don't wanna wait much longer than the
Right.
next meeting.
Right.
So the next meeting, we can come back with those numbers, Jeff, if you don't mind.
If you want to give me the scenarios that you want run, yes, I can run those numbers.
I think we would be, I think we should do that.
And then, because I don't think the concept that the ordinance is drafted is there. The question is just going to be in that section, I wrote it, I should remember it, but in that section, are we going to make it April of '22 to April of '23 this amount, and then '23 to '24 this amount, and take it out the length of the contract? Are we gonna have a set amount? And maybe if Jeff can give you numbers on what a 10 and 7 would be, and what a 12 and 5 would be, then maybe that will fit you, because I think we have to calculate in that we are picking up the first 566,000 this year.
Right.
Yep. And then we're picking up anything above and beyond.
Correct.
For however long we take it.
And I just, that's the reason I pointed out, you will be at deficit this year.
Well, unless we choose to not, we pay the total amount for the whole year, right? I mean, that's another option.
For me, it's important to know what, what's our break even.
It's just an option.
I mean, I would like to know what our break even is, so that we don't have to go into the deficit.
And I mean, and what we already have appropriated, I think that, and Irene, I think Councilman Nally, I apologize, I'm so used to calling you first name. I think that's what you were saying, is what would it take to continue what we've been doing in years past, essentially subsidizing, and then just passing on the increase to the residents? How would that change?
Yeah.
Are you wanting that kind of number? So we could take our past contract and take the increase and divide it by the 8,100 households.
Okay, so we have 10 and 722, 12 and 522, break even. And number 4 was
I think that's,
currently where we're at. And by currently, we have 21 that you actually paid, or you have 22 of the budget. What current do you want to use as?
well, we take
I would say
21. Take
You want
21,
21's
because that's what we've
actual
actually paid. I mean, that's what we actually paid under the old contract, was 21.
The 916 per household.
Yeah, was that what it was?
I think it's important to note this, that really our discussion isn't necessarily to, in charging citizens. I think citizens ought to need to understand this, is that we're not trying to create a windfall for the city as it is to make sure that we are balancing the fiscal needs of our community, preserving our integrity of our revenue and expenses, at the same time weighing the impact that it's going to have on our residents.
Correct.
So we got to find that balance and make it work. And it's, again, it's not a windfall thing for the city, but rather find that sweet spot where it makes sense.
I agree too.
And so here's the,
I mean, we know we have to pay.
here's the game plan then. I will have a draft ordinance for you as it exists now. I will have a draft ordinance that pays it in stages with the bill and whatever that number's gonna be, okay? Bring it back to the next meeting. We've already had our public hearing, but you don't have to vote on it tonight. You'll consider it for voting at the next meeting. And then what happens after you pass one, then it gets published again in the newspaper, because it's been adopted, whatever that number is. And then we'll implement the fee in April, whatever it is. It's $10, $5, $8, whatever it is. Acceptable? I'll bring it back in those stages.
And I will provide you those 4 scenarios and an executive summary for you all to digest and discuss. Next meeting is when?
It is February.
About an hour from now?
It's January 19th, and that is a Wednesday, by the way.
Martin Luther King Day, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And will you guys need me for that?
I'll leave that up to the council.
I would say yes. I mean, I appreciate you putting it all together, but at that time, if we could have a little bit of open discussion, that would be great, if you can.
You don't live too far, Jeff.
I just gotta make sure I'm not booked somewhere else. Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we beat trash to death, so. So I think we need to go on to, there isn't any new business, so we'll go into the other business. Can I read that by title only, Ms. Wilson?
Other business by title only, please. Second.
We have a motion and a second for title only under other business. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. City Council to appoint member of the Planning Commission. This is an annual appointment. Senior Planner Joanna.
Good evening. City Council does have the annual appointment to the Plan Commission, and it does have to be a member of council. Last year's member was Chris Rainierson, so we currently have a vacancy. Luckily, we've not had a meeting in December, so we're ready for your appointment.
And our previous council member was on the planning commission, right?
She was as a mayoral appointment previously. Irene Nally was.
And I think I relayed to the council that Joe Abbott is going to take the mayoral position, and Irene is free if you guys wish.
I'll make a motion to appoint Irene Nally. She's willing to be a member of our planning commission as our appointment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Mrs. Nally. Is there anyone else? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations. So, all those in favor of Irene representing the Planning Commission?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that gets us to council comments, and I think it's very important, even though it's been a long meeting with one item on the agenda, I think we should still go ahead and do that. And I'm going to start down here with Mayor's Youth Council.
So the Mayor's Youth Council, right now, we are looking for another project in addition to our free public Wi-Fi project. That will be installed in the square here and at the new amphitheater complex. So we're looking for another project because we're obviously not Wi-Fi engineers. We don't know how to do that. So we're looking for something where we can get our hands dirty. So we're trying to figure that out right now.
How do you feel about trash?
Yep.
So that was a good piece for all of us. Thank you. All right, Mr. Prines?
I have nothing tonight.
Mrs. Dean?
No comment.
Mr. Austin?
Thank you to the council. Very humbling that you nominated me again for president of the council. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
No, just happy to see a lot of people here expressing their concerns. We do take them seriously and hope to make a very educated and good decision on behalf of our residents as well as the city.
Mr. Taylor?
Just like Ken said, thank you for the nomination and approval on vice president again. Looking forward to serving again, and happy new year to everybody, and I'm looking forward to getting this all ironed out.
Mr. Keefe?
I was going to apologize to Mr. Jones for my comment, but he's not here. I have to do that privately. Other than that, I have no comment.
Mrs. Nally?
I want to thank everyone for the nomination of me continuing to serve the Planning Commission. And just thanks. Look forward.
All right, thank you. Again, thank you to the council for your hard work. Motion to adjourn by anyone?
Motion adjourned.
All those in favor?
Aye.